We are all thrilled that we are continuing our educational opportunities for students, and we all look forward to a quick journey back to, well, what we have often called normal. But as we work through the anticipations of bringing all of our students back into our schools full-time, we continue to look through the lens of our equity framework as we began the work going into COVID, knowing that some of our students would experience considerable disruptions in the services that they would provide as a result of agencies, facilities, opportunities being limited and access being compromised. And we continue that equity lens as we move forward in anticipation of our students coming back to us, having student achievement data from the recent the Florida Student Standards Assessment, helping us align that, apply that, and triangulate that, if you will, to our other progress monitoring tools to best meet the needs of our kids as they return to our schools. But we will also keep in place some of the best practices, if you will, that we've learned through this experience and continue some of our mitigation strategies. For example, extraneous furniture. We'll be mindful of not allowing our classrooms to be cluttered and unnecessarily compromise social distancing where appropriate. Evaluating our hallway traffic patterns and continuing to modify those as needed to minimize that face-to-face interaction. Continuing to make plexiglass available to our staff and teachers as they find a need for them for their classrooms. Our water fountains, will continue to restrict them to filling water bottles for use. Our clinic spaces, allowing for separation of students. You know, many of these things are just good practices for mitigating the transmission of any illness, whether it's a cold or the regular flu or those types of things. So we're going to continue to maintain some of these strategies just as good practice. Our facilities team continue to prioritize HVAC filter changes, as well as our custodial strike team will remain in place at least for the next year to be responsive and supportive of our schools. In terms of daily operations, our cafeteria staff, custodians will continue their practice of amplified cleaning procedures and protocols. As you know, we have those high-touch surfaces that are identified and prioritized for regular cleaning throughout the day. Our buses will be returning to full occupancy, but our drivers are committed to continuing those intermittent cleaning strategies or practices across our buses in between the routes, elementary, middle, and high school. Technology, educational technology, will continue to obtain the equipment that we provided to students and families, getting that scrubbed, if you will, both literally and digitally, and getting them equipped and ready to utilize in our schools. I want to emphasize this bullet here because if there is anything that we felt the impact of, it was the support and the engagement we were able, or I should say not able to have at the level we prefer and want to have with our parents and our community and our schools by having to limit access to our schools. So we will be returning to more in-person engagement opportunities. I'm not sure if it's on this slide or one coming up. Volunteering will open up volunteers to be able to get in our schools for those planned activities that they've had over in the past to support our teachers, to support our media centers, and our classrooms, and really re-engage in a very robust way parents and families and community in our schools. We are looking forward to and anxiously anticipating that level of involvement and engagement in our schools. Other things as well, we continue to encourage families to utilize our e-pay process for the cafeteria. So that students don't have to deal with the exchange of money. Our locker rooms will be reopened and fully accessible for our students and certainly cleaned regularly. Professional development will continue to support our staff at the beginning of the year through our normal orientation portal and cleaning and mitigation protocols across our organization. We'll also continue our support of staff in the development of blended learning instructional experiences. Let me spend a moment on this because some see as, oh, are we going back to e-learning or hybrid and those types of that? That is not what this is referencing. We had blended learning professional development in place before we ever knew of COVID-19. That is the practice of integrating and utilizing instructional technology, computers, and digital resources in the classroom to complement the learning that's going on there. And then, of course, we'll continue our professional development for trauma-informed practices. The reality is our kids continue to face and be confronted with every possible form of trauma out and when they leave us, when they're not in the environment of our schools. And our school psychologists, our social workers, our school counselors, even our administrators become increasingly necessary to respond to and meet the needs of our kids as they face things like food security or homelessness or even other tragedies in their home or community life when they're not with us. Of course, student health will be a priority as we in an ongoing way review the needs of our medically fragile students to ensure that we're being responsive and attentive to their individual health plans and the necessary responses for our kids in those situations. But we always will depend on and ask that our parents be the first line of defense in monitoring the daily health of their child. Some of the provisions we'll continue to make available for our schools, certainly the access and availability of both adult and pediatric face masks as they might need for any individual who would want one, recognizing that our mask policy or mask practice will be voluntary for both employees and students moving forward. But we'll also ensure that we have PPE and hand sanitizer and cleaning products and resources available. The misting machines became very utilized over the last several months, and we continue to have the cleaning product that goes in those machines readily available for our schools and so on, and they can order those directly from our warehouse. Academic support and academic response, which we will talk more and more about moving forward, really in the frame of learning acceleration. Some have used or referenced learning recovery, learning remediation. We are taking a much more proactive and ambitious approach, and that is learning acceleration. For every one of our students, recognizing that our kids will come to us with a variety of educational, academic learning needs, and we need to identify what those specific needs are for our kids and really target and hone the response and support them. Some of our students will have had very little, if any, academic learning interruption over the last year. We need to continue to accelerate them forward from where they are. And other students will come to us having experienced potentially some very significant learning loss or interrupted learning over the past several months, and we'll need to be equally responsive and attentive to supporting our kids in those needs. We'll continue our progress monitoring in ELA, English Language Arts and Math, for our students 3 times a year. Fortunately, the federal stimulus funding remains available for us to financially make our learning acceleration plans feasible, make them a reality for our students and families. Our schools continue to receive funding going into next year to support those extra academic learning opportunities for students. Our summer school is in full session now, and we continue to provide transportation. Kudos to our schools and our transportation teams, not knowing exactly who, when, and where our kids would be coming back to us or coming to us for summer learning acceleration. Our schools and transportation teams work together so well to provide that service to our kids. as well as we have found the invaluable utilization of our virtual or digital resources for our kids and families. And that will continue to be a priority for us as we move forward, utilizing, implementing, and making our families aware of the digital textbooks, digital resources that we have available for all of our students and families moving forward as we work together to accelerate every student's learning experience. So student activities, I'll begin by referencing our former return to activity plan. That has been sunset for this summer, and moving forward, we are proceeding with our, I'll use the word normal, student activities plan. That includes visitors and volunteers coming to our schools for structured activities and supports. That'll be planned with the leaders in our schools and working with our volunteers and so on. Principals may approve in-county field trips as consistent with our board policy, as well as our leading and learning directors will review and approve out-of-county field trips, and of course, any out-of-state field trips, activities, and so on will continue to require board approval moving forward. We ask our principals to continue to consider mitigation strategies when approving large group activities, certainly taking into consideration what are good practices, what are best practices, just to keep us all increasingly safe and healthy as we move forward. And continue to, when feasible, hold or consider what might be high-risk events outdoors instead of indoors, if there's a feasible alternative without inhibiting those opportunities. There are some items still under consideration as we continue to walk out these days this summer, make our board and the community aware. We are continuing to evaluate and await updated contact tracing and quarantining of student practices. We continue to remain in close collaboration and discussion with our local Department of Health. And then, of course, the practice of quarantining students, what that'll look like moving forward. As vaccinations become increasingly available for younger students right now, ages 12 and up, certainly want our community to be aware of that possibility or that resource for our kids, their kids as well. Our clinic protocols regarding students who display symptoms of COVID-19, we are continuing to evaluate what will that look like moving forward. We had very extensive practices in place last school year. The extent of the necessity of those extensive practices is still under review, and we'll bring any future decisions to the board in the future as we head towards next school year. Evaluating the case reporting and dashboard management of our COVID dashboard, as you recall, it is continuing to be maintained through summer school. Decision has not been made at this point moving forward if that'll be continued in the next school year. We have seen a significant reduction in the number of positive cases or transmission cases and quarantines. Certainly from the result of having far fewer students in our schools for summer school, but also as individuals become increasingly vaccinated. We had to modify, we were given state support to evaluate our mandatory drill process of our evacuation of other emergencies. The board is aware that they were not eliminated. They could not be, they couldn't not be done, but we were provided some flexibility in how we did those emergency drills. For example, we have safe space areas designated in every one of our classrooms where students assemble in the classroom in the event of a crisis or threatening situation on campus. We didn't utilize students moving to those close spaces and compromising social distancing. We used directive strategies in the past, but we'll be evaluating what that looks like moving forward. And then, of course, the unplanned or visits of parents and or guests on campus and what that'll look like moving forward. I bring back the responsibilities of parents and legal guardians. We presented this now what seems almost like a lifetime ago as we entered into the era of COVID last year. And certainly we continue to uphold those as Our parents, again, are critical in helping us support them and support our kids with accurate information and contact information, promptly picking up students and caring to their health needs as they become, as we become engaged in that as necessary through our clinics and so on. And ask that our parents continue to provide us the most accurate and complete medical information, and ultimately just emphasizing the partnership we must have with our parents and families, even as we move, hopefully, completely and fully back into a period of normalcy, if you will, in the 21-22 school year.